Good evening, El Paso. Welcome to Philosophic Dialogues from La Frontera, where we share the fun of the big questions with you. My name is Dr. Kim Diaz, and I teach philosophy at EPCC.
My name is Jazmine Gracia, and I am a fellowship at the Humanities Collaborative on behalf of EPCC and UTEP.
My name is Mende, and I'm also an EPCC UTEP research fellow. I'm working with the collaborative with Dr. Díaz and Dr. Simon.
And my name is Dr. Jules Simon. I work as a philosopher at the University of Texas, El Paso. And today we're happy to share with you this special edition where we have our student fellows interviewing us, Dr. Díaz and I, on the work that we're doing in the Humanities Collaborative. And the Humanities Collaborative, EPCC UTEP, is an endeavor, an effort to help facilitate better working relations between the community college and the university, the 2-year community college and the 4-year university. And we received a sub-grant, Dr. Díaz and I, to help facilitate the transfer of students from the community college to UTEP in pursuit of careers in humanities. And so today, we're really happy to have our 2 student fellows interviewing us about the work that we do with this collaborative.
Okay, Jared, go ahead.
Okay, well, my first question for you and Dr. Díaz is, how did you guys come up with the idea and start the Philosophic Dialogues from La Frontera show?
Okay, it was actually Miss Carol Barkin's idea. I know that EPCC TV was looking for programming, and so she approached me and asked me if I would be interested in doing a philosophy show. But then I thought it's enough that I put my own students to sleep without, sharing the joy with the whole community and putting them to sleep too. So I thought it would be more fun to have a dialogue partner and then to have guests, and then we could talk philosophically, have a dialogue, and then that way the viewers it would be a little bit more entertaining, also educational, but not just one person talking the whole time. So that was the idea, and we thought Dr. Simon and I both do research on dialogue and how important that is for communication and democracy and relationships, and then we're here in La Frontera, and so we thought let's do a show with that theme.
And interview colleagues and professional friends working in different fields and find out from them what's philosophic about the work that they do in order to, to show that, there's good things going on at the border here, and also there are good ways to raise questions from the border to people living in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. So we've interviewed people from India and Colombia and different parts of the United States, and it's been wonderful so far.
That's awesome.
And last year we've had the chance to work with you guys.
Great.
So yeah, as Jules mentioned, the EPCC UTEP Humanities Collaborative is meant to help students transition from 2-year to a 4-year institution, a 2-year college to a 4-year institution by means of the humanities. And so I would like to ask precisely that, how was your transition? You both were EPCC students, and now you're both at UTEP. So how was that transition for you? Maybe we can start with Jazmine. How was it for you, Jazmine?
Okay, well, immediately I think I had a lot of predispositions of my own regarding EPCC and transitioning to UTEP. I've always heard of EPCC or just any a 2-year college be described as a smooth transition from high school to as an exposure to that kind of higher education, and that was easy. That was really a really smooth transition, and I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was really hands-on, and everybody was able to kind of interact with you and kind of guide you. So I think that kind of transition was kind of necessary in the sense of oh, this is your first steps to a higher institution. And then going from EPCC to UTEP, I found it a little bit more jarring just because of my own inherent oh, I'm kind of intimidated by the setting, and like it's much more bigger, like just in terms of like its I guess like architecture. It's a lot more intimidating navigating like different buildings and stuff like that. But after that, like after my first semester, I would say it was much more like easier and got gratifying as I went. So it was a little jarring, but it went well.
What about you, Jared?
For me, the transition from EPCC to UTEP was quite easy. I found it really nice. I'm less of a traditional student because when I got out of high school, when I graduated high school, I did not think I was going to go to college. And I didn't go back to college for a few years. And it was my wife who said that she convinced me that I should try EPCC, and I think EPCC was the best thing for me. I really love EPCC. It helped ease me into college, helped me see that college was, I think, better than high school. And it was affordable and good teaching, like really quality teaching. And so I don't think I would have done well with a jump straight into UTEP, but through EPCC, when I got to UTEP, it just got better. I just love UTEP so much. I really just love school. So, yeah.
Okay. And so the idea is what we would like to do is build on this, right? And expand it so that more students can have positive experiences transitioning from EPCC to UTEP. So we'll build on the project that we've done this past year on the student edition of the Philosophical Dialogues. But now Jazmine has a question.
Right, okay, so you guys have been doing a multitude of episodes of Philosophic Dialogue and have encountered people from different fields and backgrounds. So I was kind of wondering, how has encountering people from different disciplines has impacted your everyday life and your teaching styles?
Well, in terms of teaching, just directly, I want to respond to your first answers to the question about the transition. And encountering people from other disciplines, for me, helps me to become a better teacher because it reminds me of how wonderful all of these different fields of study are. Like the people that we interview are just doing incredibly great work, publishing books and getting grants and doing their own sorts of public engagement work. And so that helps remind me of my commitment as a teacher to offer to my students a kind of open horizon, because who knows what you're going to become, right? Who knows if you're going to end up becoming a student forever because you love to be a student, right? Or maybe a teacher. You might become an educator, and who knows with you, Jazmine, you know what this kind of jarring transition could turn into. You know, maybe you're going to work as some kind of in some kind of guidance or counseling sort of way, or as a mentor yourself, you know, and helping people through rough times or transitions anyway, right? So I think it's really helped me to become an even better teacher. I've always thought that I was a really good teacher. In fact, when I first started teaching at UTEP, students would describe me as the happy philosopher. And I think over the years, in terms of my teaching, I think I've become even happier. And this show has helped me, Philosophic Dialogues has helped me to become, you know, even more expansive and broad-minded with respect to my students.
I have the next question. Well, the next question is going to be, you guys had this show where you were bringing people in and you wanted to expand it. And I wanted to ask, like, why did you feel like you should expand it to have the student edition?
Yeah, I could speak to that. It's a real blessing and honor to have been invited to do this show for us, right? To share what we're very passionate about, philosophy, with our audience. And I feel super privileged because I have a PhD in philosophy, and yeah, so I've had really great opportunities. But I know that I'm not the only one with cool questions. In fact, my students have way cooler, more interesting questions than I do. And it's because I've had the good fortune of having been trained as a philosopher and all of this, that I get to have the show. So I thought, wouldn't it be awesome to invite the students, for the students to ask their own questions? And so the light bulb came on that instead of just Jules and me doing the questions and the dialogue, wouldn't we have students do that? And then even better, if we could pair the students at EPCC with faculty at UTEP, for them to see if they might find a mentor or a point of connection at UTEP that will help with that transition. So that's we thought we could use what we have to bring in students to partake, and then while we do that, it will help them make that transition a little bit easier, hopefully. So that was the idea.
Can I add a little bit to it?
Yeah.
So, well, it really was, so one of the motivations, I think, for both of us was because we love practicing philosophy. We love just, helping people learn how to think, because thinking is a really cool thing to do, right? Besides getting things done, thinking is just enjoyable, right? It's like meditating. It's really good for your soul and your spirit. And so because we enjoyed the show so much, we decided, and it, as a phenomenon, it's kind of falls in the category of doing philosophy publicly, not just as a professional academic discipline, but sharing it with a wider audience, just having the show itself, right? And so we've, because of the success we had, we wanted to share even more. And so we combined it not only with this initiative to get students involved, but also to help build an internet presence. So, and hopefully also a radio presence, a radio show presence. So we developed what we've called the student edition of Philosophic Dialogues, and you two were a very big part of that.
The pioneers.
You were the pioneers, exactly. Very, very good, nice. And so the next step is to get students like you who know about now Philosophic Dialogues interested in getting other students attracted so that they can learn how to ask or inquire philosophically about how to make their way through life, to look for teachers that they want to study with or disciplines they want to study in. And the internet part of it is that not only will people hopefully see the show, see the student edition of the show, but also once we get the radio part of it going, they'll hear it on the radio on NPR if we can make that happen. And then they'll see also the internet versions of the recordings that we do. That'll be another point of access, both the student interviews and the regular interviews that Dr. Díaz and I do. So that was a little bit more expansive than just helping students along, but helping students along is like a critical part of it because it's all an educational endeavor.
Mm-hmm. I just think, for instance, if I was an economics student, let's say, right, at EPCC, and I wanted to take classes at UTEP, and it'd be nice to have a teacher at UTEP that I could talk with. Through philosophy, then maybe I could have a conversation with that professor and ask about the nature of money, for instance, right? Like, how come money increases in value, and how come it loses its value, and some currencies just totally go out of style?
Yeah.
And so much of our lives is spent earning money. So just, through philosophy, having a conversation about the nature of money, and then in the process, I get to chat with this professor, and hopefully I can ask this professor questions about what classes to take and, how to combine my classes so that I'm successful this semester, or it's a point of connection. Okay, so Jules, your question.
And so philosophy is a good venue to do that because one of the practices that we philosophers have specialized in is in raising questions and learning how to phrase questions and ask the right kinds of questions, right? And so for my question, I'd like to address the both of you. And the question has to do with this, and it's related to why we think it's important to raise questions, right? And since you both have had experience now in how to actually do a philosophic dialogue interview, maybe you could each share from your own perspectives what your experience was like. What was it like doing the interviews? What was it like having to come up with questions and then having to do it on camera and get connected with somebody?
Oh, at first, obviously scary, very intimidating. But after having done my first interview and kind of even outside of the interviewing process, just watching you guys' philosophic dialogue episodes and having to watch them and have exposure to the different disciplines, I find it kind of makes me eager to kind of nurture my questions and stuff, my curiosity, for lack of a better word. It helps me nurture my curiosity because when you're exposed to those kind of things, I feel naturally questions arise and stuff like that, and you kind of just just innately just begin to question things, write it down, and even if it's a basic question very superficial, what is economics or something like that, or anything that's just related to the field. But then once you have more exposure to it, or multiple exposures to different disciplines, it kind of facilitates your I guess the way you process or create questions. I think it's made me very eager and kind of it's validated my questions in a way too, that there's no such thing as irrelevant questions or anything like that personally. And I've really liked that. I've been able to come up with questions, and then once I come up with a question, I can basically break it down and then be okay, well, what am I actually trying to ask here? And then it just kind of leads to more questions. And I like that because it's it all started from one simple question.
Yeah, to come back to your question from before, because you ask different people, there's also a comparative element. Right? So you can begin to compare how people are answering. And that even, changes how we raise questions, right? That's nice, yeah.
And Jared, how about you?
Well, this is a real studio. And they've got multiple cameras and stuff, which was interesting when I walked in the room. It's whoa, it feels like I'm on a talk show. Interviewing has been interesting. I think the biggest thing for me that I didn't foresee was the connections I'd make with people. Because the professor I called in for my interview, Dr. Ivanova, I never met her. The first time I met her was when she came in, and it was just this great connection, and she answered questions wonderfully. I'm studying philosophy and literature, and so linguistics is I'm not going to take any linguistics classes, and that's a professor I have in the linguistics department that now I have this kind of connection with, and it's been really great to work with the collab just in general to make those connections, because I don't know, that's kind of the potential for dialogue is that. And so that's been my favorite part.
Cool.
All right, let me see. Jazmine has the next question.
Okay. So you guys have much experience in developing questions and such. So how should we as interviewers prioritize or create questions for the interviews?
So for me, when we were doing this interview process and we would be having our weekly meetings, I basically came up with as many questions as I could possibly ask about the subject. Even the most general and the ones that people should know, to really specific and idiosyncratic ones. Just kind of a little bit of a train of thought. Just ask as many questions. And then I took it to you guys and I was, okay, what questions are good and what questions are not so great? What questions can we get rid of? And how can I word some of these questions differently? And through dialogue with you guys, I got a set of questions that I thought flowed well. So that's how it's worked with me, my experience.
And as I just mentioned 5 minutes ago, we philosophers have developed this art for asking questions. So I think part of what practicing good philosophy as a teacher and just as a philosopher is how to pose a question and asking just the right question at just the right time and to just the right person, right? And so we've developed actually together a style for asking questions. And we usually start very generally. It's kind of a general sort of inroad to whatever person we're talking to and the discipline that they're working in, like in chemistry or biology. We'll ask a general question like, what is biology? And then, because biology is a big field, we then move a little more personally and more deeply into specialization. Like, what got you interested in biology and why did you get interested in this special area in biology? Like immunology or environmental biology or whatever, the specialty the person has, right? And then that leads to the kind of back and forthness of a dialogue. And since we don't know the future or what kind of issues are going to come up, that leads to other questions and these more idiosyncratic or particular ones. And then we get to kind of like really interesting stuff. I mean, the really interesting stuff is, how do you compare kind of generalities? Because that's how we think in generalities, right? But then what drives our interest and our motivation are these special areas, the things that really catch our attention. Like, I just want to study, how plants grow, why plants grow next to each other, and some do well, some with each other, and how some plants, you plant them because they'll keep the animals away so they won't feed on them or something like that, right? So those then become, help us to understand what drives research in certain areas, because research is always specialty oriented, right? And that's kind of like a bigger goal, a bigger goal of the whole project and of getting students involved is to promote humanities-based research. That this is an important thing to do for us, we humans, is to understand why humans do what we do and why we're interested in what we do, right? So anyway, that was a kind of a longer answer to that question.
I was going to say, Jerry, you better cut him off right there because he'll keep going.
I liked it.
And then you have the next question.
The next question.
Yeah.
You guys have really started the student edition. And what do you think is the next step?
Oh, that's a good question. The next step is I would really like to make it substantial, right? To have a good substantial number of students, EPCC students, including also freshmen from UTEP, connect well with professors in their field and help the process of transitioning from the 2-year to the 4-year or from the freshman, sophomore to junior, senior. So that, and then of course we'll have to run the numbers and see that it's substantial and it's working. I would love to see it institutionalized so that if Jules and I end up moving to Hollywood to go on our next adventure, right? The program will continue. I would like it. To me, success would be not only that the students, there's a nice number of students making use of the opportunity, but also that it outlives us. Mm-hmm.
And briefly, to provide a different perspective on a kind of different horizon, different vision. We started off talking about expanding the program, expanding the good thing, right? Since we already have the shows on YouTube, what we really would like to do, especially with the development of the website that we're doing with your help, right, is to make it even more accessible to others, not only people interested in the kind of subjects or the people we're interviewing, but students from other places you know, seeing how they can engage in philosophic dialogues. I'd love to eventually have, you know, to track somehow, see students queuing in from, you know, Africa or California or Canada or Patagonia, you know, checking out what it's like to do a philosophic dialogue and why it's important and how we've developed this kind of model. So this is a kind of larger sort of vision, and I'm not sure that it'll ever get us to Hollywood, but I think that would be another mark of success, building on our success.
Yeah, we have a lot of ideas.
Big ideas.
Including opening it up to people in the community so that people in the community can ask these questions too of each other, right? So we'll see how it all unfolds, but
I think the show is a good example of thinking globally but acting locally. You know, that kind of formula, right? Because here we are in the studio on EPCC's campus, and you know, hopefully gearing up to reach an even broader audience.
we would like to thank our crew because without them this wouldn't be possible. We would like to thank our students because without you this wouldn't be possible. So, and thank you to our viewers for supporting us. Please check our other videos on YouTube. This has been Philosophic Dialogues from La Frontera. My name is Kim Diaz, philosopher at EPCC.
Jazmine, a researcher at the EPCC and UTEP Humanities Collaborative.
Jared, also a researcher and student at UTEP.
And Jules Simon, philosopher at University of Texas, El Paso. Thank you.